I've been working as a security guard at this old factory complex in Detroit for about half a year now. It's not exactly the most glamorous job, but it pays decent enough to cover the bills, so I stick with it. Most of my time here is spent vigilantly watching footage from surveillance cameras, making sure no one's sneaking around where they shouldn't be. It's usually pretty quiet, just me and these empty, echoing warehouses at night. I've been working the overnight shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. ever since I started, and honestly, it's a rough gig. The sleep deprivation gets to you sometimes. Still, I manage. The factory is a relic from back when it mostly made auto parts, though now most of it's shut down, with a few buildings still operating. At night, everything's cast in shadows, and there's always this eerie sound of rats scurrying around. My routine starts with checking all the doors, making sure they're securely locked. Then I settle into the security office with a cup of coffee, glued to the monitors. Every couple of hours I do a walk around, shining my flashlight into dark corner switch. To be honest, is pretty dull, but it's paying work. That is, until one night when everything went completely sideways. It was bitterly cold that night, Michigan cold, the kind that sinks deep into your bones, and I was already feeling worn out from a bad sleep the night before. I was sitting there staring at the screens when I noticed something odd on camera 3, down near the back loading dock. It looked like a shadow darting across the feed quick, sneaky, and I leaned in closer, squinting, trying to tell what I was seeing. It was too dark to be sure, but I remember thinking it might have been nothing. Then the shadow appeared again, moving faster, and I exhaled with a sigh, grabbed my flashlight and my jacket, and decided to check things out outside. The factory layout is like a maze at night, big, old buildings with alleys in between. I shined my light around, checking the loading dock. The door was still shut tight, no sign of any break-in. I moved over to the fence, inspecting it carefully. It was undamaged, no holes or anything. Maybe it was just the wind tossing trash around, I thought, and was about to head back inside when I heard this faint, sneaky snicker come from the shadows. I froze, listening intently. Suddenly, 4 or 5 figures emerged, kids with masks like they were role-playing or something, jumpy, hyper, full of energy like they'd been hyped up on sugar. One of them shoved me hard, and I almost dropped my flashlight, stumbling back. Before I could process what was happening, another one punched me right in the stomach so strong I felt the air leave my lungs. I bent over, gasping, and then they were on me. They started hitting and kicking like pack animals on a rampage. I swung my flashlight at one of them, trying to defend myself, but they were quick. Someone yanked it out of my hand and tossed it aside. Then another punched me hard enough to crack my nose, blood streaming down, tasting metallic and salty in my nose. I tried to yell, but they just kept hitting me, knocking me to the ground repeatedly. Someone kicked my legs out from under me, and I hit the gravel hard, pain ripping through my knees and hands. They didn't stop. Kicks to my ribs, my back, my arms, until I curled up, desperately trying to cover my head. The pain was everywhere. I could hear their crazy, wild laughing like they were having some sick game. It was horrifying, the way they enjoyed hurting me, like mean kids who'd tear wings off flies just to see them squirm. That's what scared me most, their callous indifference, their enjoyment of my suffering. It felt like hours, though. I'm sure it wasn't until someone finally slammed my head so hard everything went black. The next thing I remember is waking up, still in the dark, still freezing cold. I was sprawled on the gravel, my face pressed into it. My head throbbed like a drum, and my mouth tasted like blood. I tried moving, but every part of me ached. My ribs felt like fire, and my hands wouldn't respond. Blood splattered out of my nose, pooling in my sinuses. I spat out blood and some broken teeth. They'd really done a number on me. I had no idea how long I'd been out when I looked around. The kids were gone, vanished without a trace. My clothes were torn, shoes missing, probably stolen. I checked my wallet, it was still in my pocket. Guess they weren't after money, they just wanted to hurt me. I managed to get to my feet, shaky and dizzy as hell, every step stabbing pain into my ribs. I roughly leaned against a wall, stumbling back toward the office. My legs kept tripping, my bones weak, my ribs stabbing with each breath. Finally, I made it back inside, collapsed into a chair and grabbed the phone. My hands trembled so bad I could hardly dial 911. I mumbled about being attacked, gave them the address, and sat there, trying to keep conscious. The paramedics arrived fast, lights flashing, loading me onto a stretcher. They asked me what happened, but my jaw was way too sore to speak clearly. I was taken to the hospital where I spent days getting patched up. The doctor said I'd broken ribs, had a concussion, a fractured finger, and my face was pretty banged up. They even pulled out some teeth and gave me painkillers. Said I was lucky it wasn't worse. But honestly, I didn't feel very lucky. When I was resting, two cops showed up, an older guy and a younger one. They asked me to describe the attackers. I told them they were young, fast-moving kids with masks and that they acted like maniacs. That's all I had. They took notes, said they'd look into it, but I never heard from them again. I guess it was a loss to many shadows in Detroit to find those kids easily. A few days later, they finally let me go home, still hurting. I couldn't do much, couldn't work, obviously. I got two kids depending on me, and I had no idea how I'd pay the bills. My daughter, just 8, cried when she saw me all beat up. My son, 12, tried to act tough but looked scared. I lied to them, told them I'd had an accident at work so they wouldn't worry. My sister, who's a nurse, came over to help bringing food, changing my band-aids, and I hated needing her like that, but I was just too weak. Getting out of bed was a fight every morning. Me ribs hurt, my hands didn't grip right, and I felt useless. I kept replaying that night over and over. Why'd they do it? Just for kicks. I'd never hurt anyone, just doing my job. It made no sense. My boss called, apologized, said they'd beef up security, maybe add another guard, though it didn't do much to help me feel better. The other guards, when I finally returned, clapped me on the shoulder and said how glad they were I was okay. But I saw the worry in their eyes. They knew it could have been them. The police never found those kids. They probably never will. It's maddening to think they got away, and I've got these scars, a constant reminder that life's not fair. Now I'm way more cautious, always scanning around, expecting trouble. Maybe it's good, keeps me sharp. But it's also made me realize just how fast things can go bad, how we can't stop it all the time. I keep going for my kids. For myself, there's really no other option. I grew up in Modesto back in the 1980s. Honestly, I fell in with a rough crowd, had friends who went to jail, some who ended up dead. But I really admired the ones who said enough was enough before their lives got too heavy to carry. I decided to clean myself up. Since I was pretty good at driving, I got a job at a local cab company, making an honest living while still cruising through the city I loved. By 1991, I was 24, and I'd been driving fares around Modesto for nearly 2 years. That job was wild, I tell you. You meet all kinds of characters. One time, I picked up this raspy-voiced little guy who flagged me down, and when I asked him his story, he looked me dead in the eye through my rearview mirror and said, "Because I've had 14 beers, 5 shots of tequila, and I'm too damn old to spend the night in jail." We both cracked up, and he tipped me well. So hats off to the Hells Angels, I guess. But not everyone was fun or friendly. Some passengers got me into serious trouble, and this is one of those times. It was August 2nd, 1991, around 8:30 p.m. just after sunset, and I was driving down the avenue, about to turn onto the 108 heading downtown. It was a Friday, so I knew it'd be busy. As I approached my turn, I saw a girl standing on the side of the road, sticking her thumb out at passing cars. My first thought, bad idea. Fridays and Saturdays get pretty rowdy once the sun sets, so I pulled over, honked, and waited for her to come over. When she finally reached my window, I didn't even get a chance to ask where she was headed before she blurted out, "I don't got any money, sorry. I just really need a ride." Her voice was shaky, and I could tell she'd been crying. Instead of just driving off like some jerk, I told her to get in. I'd give her a free ride, no problem. She looked so relieved. She almost started crying again and she said, "Oh my God, really? Oh, thank you so much." As she climbed into the back seat, she told me she wanted to go to the airport, so I gave her my name and asked hers. During the ride, I checked in with her, asking if she was okay, knowing full well she wasn't. I figured just asking what's wrong might be too much, but I wanted to listen. She said she'd just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 years, and she was headed to the airport to catch a flight to Florida, where her grandparents lived. I told her I was sorry, but I'd see a lot of girls like her doing the same thing, hitching rides, trying to escape bad situations. It's a sad reality. When relationships go south, someone's always scrambling to get out fast, hoping to find safety. I told her I was happy to listen if she wanted to talk. She took her time, and I let her pour out her story. She moved from the East Coast for college, met her boyfriend during her junior year, then moved in with him after graduation. She said he was supportive at first, sweet, patient, good to her. But over time, things shifted. He got less patient, more bitter. They never fought, she said, until she started trying to find a job. The job market was cutthroat, and despite her efforts, she wasn't landing anything. Her boyfriend started to get angrier, more impatient with her sitting at home, applying for jobs with no luck. Their fights became more frequent, 2 or 3 times a week, she said. Then, one huge fight happened just as she was venting about her job hunt. Her boyfriend, who'd once been respectful, started telling her to pack her things, throwing her belongings around, escalating into something violent. She ran out with her packed suitcase, just like her dad's old stories of his violent outbursts kicked in. I felt a pang of anger and sympathy. I told her I was sorry it ended that way and asked if she needed me to take her to a hospital first or if she was hurt. She shook her head, saying he hadn't directly harmed her, just made her scared. I then asked if she wanted to call the cops, but her immediate response was a trembling no. That was a big red flag, sign I'd misjudged the whole situation. I tried to tell her that if he'd hit her or damaged her stuff, she should report it, but she insisted she just wanted to get away to her grandparents. I figured she just wanted to escape her nightmare. Still, that no sounded desperate, too desperate. I asked if she'd done anything back, hit him, hurt him in self-defense. She snapped at me because they won't. That set my alarm off. I could sense she wasn't telling the full story. When she begged me to take her to the airport, all warm and pleading again, I realized she was truly scared. I suggested that if her ex had hit her, maybe the best revenge was making sure he spent a night in jail. She just shook her head furiously, saying, "That's not going to happen." I pressed her again, asking if she really wanted to let this guy get away with what he'd done. That's when she said something chilling. "He's not going to do anything to anyone anymore." And her tone heavy, serious, made the hairs stand up on my neck. That's when I realized her story might be worse than just a domestic spat. Maybe she'd done something to him, something violent, something that stopped him from doing harm in the first place. I tried to press her, saying, "Miss, if you did something bad, I gotta turn you in," but she just kept begging me, "Just take me to the airport, please." That's when I saw her move her hand reaching into her jacket, and I heard the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. I'd been robbed enough times before, 3 times in 2 years by that point, so I knew that sound. My heart shot up. I realized she'd pulled a gun on me. I remember myself saying, "Well, buddy, there's no need to do anything rash," but honestly I was frozen. She was crying, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Just take me to the airport. I don't want to hurt you, just please don't stop me." I didn't ask any more questions. I desperately wanted to, but I valued my life more. I honestly thought there might be some guy out there, some bastard who'd shot his girl or worsely bleeding out, and maybe he deserved it. But I don't support the death penalty, not for stuff like that. I just wished I knew what had truly happened, whether some poor guy was out there, wounded, dying because she'd shot him. I was ready to call for help then and there, but I just kept driving in silence, terrified. She'd practically admitted she'd shot a man, and I felt like she might do it again if that meant she could keep heading to her grandparents or whoever they were. Honestly, if that had been me, I'd be thinking about somewhere to hide in South America, not Florida. When we finally got near the airport, she told me to stop the car and that she'd walk the rest of the way. I did as she asked, parked in the shadows away from the crowd, and she demanded I turn off the engine and hand over my keys. I thought she wasn't planning to shoot me, not in front of so many people nearby. I told her I couldn't do that, I needed my keys to make a living. But then, as her eyes met mine, and the gun was pressed right against my Templar skin, cold metal, I knew I was in real trouble. She shoved the barrel into my skin so hard it hurt, and whispered, "Give me your keys." I must have had a last bit of sense left because I begged her, "You can't just take my livelihood, what am I supposed to do if I can't drive?" She cut me off talking about how all men are the same, trying to control women, and that she wasn't going to let that happen. Then she repeated that if I didn't give her the keys, she wouldn't see her non-existent kids, her fake family, that night or any night. I knew then I had to shut up and do what she said. So I handed over my keys. She climbed out, dragged her suitcase behind her, and headed toward the terminal with that same helpless, almost innocent look. I waited until she was out of sight, then bolted to the terminal, called 911 from the payphones, glancing over my shoulder the whole time. I knew security might be inside, but I wasn't about to go in after her not in that state. I didn't want to risk her shooting me in front of everyone, so I stayed outside and let the cops handle it. When they arrived, she'd already boarded a flight, probably the first to the Bahamas or somewhere else, clearly having ditched her gun. I had to get help to jumpstart my cab just to get home. The vehicle was out of commission until the company could send a spare key. Man, I felt like I'd survived something impossible. The kind of crazy stuff that makes you forever change how you see the world. I used to be the manager of a small chain of late-night diners here in Minnesota, and of all the strange incidents I've seen in my career, nothing compares to that night. I wasn't even working that night. Me two employees, Jenny and Mike, were at the restaurant when it happened. It was a tiny place off the highway, open 24/7, surrounded by fields, woods, and a lonely stretch of road. Jenny had been there for years, sharp as a whip, reliable with the customers. Mike, a solid guy in his 40s with a wife and 2 kids, was working the night shift, extra money. But that night, something walked into that diner that they would never forget. I was home sleeping when I got a call from the police. At first, I thought it was just another routine report, but then they said a lot more. They needed to review security footage from the back office. My stomach clenched as I drove through the snow, the questions swirling: was it a robbery, drunk customers causing trouble, or something worse? When I got there, I saw the footage and I couldn't believe my eyes. The cops had arrived early, and I led one of them back to the tiny back room. It was cramped, and the evidence was damning. The officers said they needed to take the tape, but asked if we could watch it first. I nodded, rewinding it to 2:30 a.m. and hit play. The scene was normal at first: Mike in the kitchen, cleaning, Jenny out front wiping tables. Then the door swung open, and 2 guys walked in. They looked like men in their late 20s, early 30s, wearing faded jeans and heavy jackets, but what freaked me out was their faces. One had a tattoo running up his neck and face. The other had these cold, unblinking eyes. At first, they seemed like just ordinary drifters sitting at the counter, ordering a burger, doing nothing crazy. But then, out of nowhere, the tattooed guy reached into his hoodie and pulled out a gun. The other immediately followed, both pointing at Mike and Jenny, who froze instantly. Jenny's eyes went as wide as saucers, her face slack, mouth open, like she was about to scream. Mike's hands trembled so badly that you could see it on the footage as they raised in surrender. The 2 men tensed, then ordered Mike and Jenny to come out from behind the counter. They shuffled forward, shaky, with Jenny clutching the counter for a moment before giving in. Then they herded them toward the back, toward the walk-in fridge. I thought they'd lock them in, clean out the cash registers, or loot the safe. But instead, after shoving Mike and Jenny inside, the 2 guys stepped in after them, slammed the heavy door shut. The footage stayed on the closed dorsalid, unyielding for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. I kept rewinding, trying to understand. Why go in? What were they doing in there? 37 minutest time the door was shut feels like forever, especially because neither of them came out. It was hell. I kept imagining the worst. Were they threatening them, forcing them into doing terrible things? The walk-in wasn't huge, just enough for 4 people if they stood close. Were they stuck inside, shivering, helpless? The tape offered no clues. When the door finally opened again after exactly 37 minutes, 2 men came out casually, relaxed, as if they'd just taken a bathroom break. One tugged his hoodie straight, the other looked around with those hollow eyes. Then they strolled right past the safe and register, left with nothing. No loot, no food, just walked out, calm as if nothing had happened, got into their car parked out of frame, and disappeared into the snow. I sat there, hands shaky, heart pounding. Everything about that scene was wrong. They'd held those 2 hostage for over half an hour, in a freezing cold walk-in, and left empty-handed. So what had they done to Mike and Jenny? What held them so silent? An hour or so later, an old, regular, tedious but dependable walked in, looked around, and then backed behind the counter. He was probably wondering where everyone was. After wandering through the back for a bit, he cracked open the door of the walk-in. And that was the moment he saw whatever was inside. He pulled back quickly, face twisted in shock. The camera footage couldn't show his expression at first, but then a second camera caught his face, eyes wide, pale like he'd just seen a ghost. He fumbled for his phone and started dialing 911. Then he ran to the grills, flipping them off probably to prevent a fire, and paced nervously, staring at the fridge. The police arrived within minutes and approached the walk-in. An officer kicked the door open with his boot, signaling come out. Jenny staggered out first, their hands over her eyes, trembling uncontrollably. Mike followed, slower, hesitant. Something in him wasn't right. He kept trying to go back in, reaching for the door even as the cops yanked him back. He fought to go inside again, his face hidden but his hands stretched out, desperate. It was like he thought he'd find her inside. They eventually calmed him down, guided him to a seat, while officers tried to talk to Jenny and Mike, kneeling, gesturing, trying to piece together what had happened. But neither of them spoke. They just sat there frozen, with their hands over their eyes, completely shattered. Whatever went down in that fridge must have broken them beyond repair. A little later, paramedics rushed in, fussed over the 2, and took them outside to the ambulance. They kept their hands over their faces, refusing to look. A cop stayed behind, scribbling notes, trying to document what little they knew. I saw myself on the tape, rushing in, coat half unbuttoned, face tense, everything on edge. And then the tape stopped. I felt sick. I remember turning to the officer, demanding to know what had happened inside that walk-in, but he just shrugged. Mike and Jenny, what little they could tell, were too stunned to speak, and there were no obvious injuries. Whatever they had endured had left them completely broken, psychologically scarred. The officer told me they'd keep digging, but right then, I felt numb. That had been my people, Mike and Jenny. I cared about them. Seeing them go through something so horrifying tore my heart apart. I tried visiting them at the hospital the next day, but the staff turned me away. I called their homes afterward. No one wanted to talk. Over weeks, both quit the diner, one after the other. Mike later moved to California, abandoning his family. His wife said he was a wreck, barely eating, hardly sleeping, then one day just vanished. Jenny ran off to a farm in Iowa with her family, trying to recover. Her mom told me she was doing better but still only spoke in clipped sentences. The police report on that night was just a vague incident, no details, no answers. The diner changed afterward, gossip about gang violence or some twisted game, conspiracy theories even, but nothing concrete. Only Jenny and Mike knew the truth, and that uncertainty made the wounds even deeper. The town's night scene dried up. People stopped coming out late, scared by what might have happened. I added extra security, more cameras, panic buttons, guards, but it never felt like enough. The damage was done. Slowly, the night crowd trickled back, but I'd never forget what I never learned. I'd drive past that flickering neon sign and wonder, who were those men? Were they still out there? Sometimes I'd watch that tape again, letting the minutes just roll by. Sometimes it felt like an eternity. Were they planning something else? What was it they did to Mike and Jenny that broke them so badly? I eventually stopped watching, stopped asking questions because I guess I'm better off not knowing. And then, on April 26, 2013, a new story surfaced. A 25-year-old mom named Jessica Hinga was working the graveyard shift at the Exxon station on Sternberg Road in Norton Shores, Michigan. Just a small, unassuming gas station, a routine stop for locals. Jessica was known for her friendly smile and dedicated attitude. It was common for her to work alone during odd hours, typical for that part of town because the crime rate there was pretty low. The nearby Fruitford Police Department wasn't far, so everyone felt safe enough, including Jessica. Just before 11 p.m., a regular customer pulled into the lot, turned off his engine, and walked inside to buy something. When he got there, he noticed no one at the counter. He figured maybe Jessica was in the bathroom, so he waited a bit. Minutes went by and an uneasy silence filled the store. Knowing Jessica, he started to worry. He decided to check the back, behind the counter. That's when he found her purse, her jacket, her belongings, but no Jessica. He called out her name a few times and looked around, but she was nowhere to be seen. The police arrived a few minutes later, examining the scene. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry. The cash register was untouched, everything in place, no damage. The safe was secure, no signs anyone had taken anything. So where was she? Jessica was more than just a clerk. She was a mother, committed to her 3-year-old son Zine and engaged to her fiancé, Dakota Quayle Dyer. Everyone called her kind-hearted, ambitious, dreaming of becoming an accountant while paying her way through school. She'd been well loved in the community. Her sudden disappearance stunned everyone. Her mother, Shelley Herringa, was devastated. She told the news that she knew Jessica was out there, waiting, just needing to be found. "I just want my baby back," Shelley said. "It feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from, and I need answers." Dakota, Jessica's fiancé, also spoke publicly. "I just want her to come home. I miss her so much, and our son does too. Every day is a struggle, but we're not giving up hope. She's out there somewhere." The police launched an investigation immediately, but the scene provided few clues. There were no signs of violence, no footprints, nothing at all. The station itself was a problem. Shockingly, there were no interior security cameras. It was a total oversight. The owner claimed they didn't think cameras were necessary inside. By then, it was too late to fix that mistake, and it made solving her case much harder. Authorities relied on other methods. Scanning units tried to track her scent, but the trail abruptly ended. A small bloodstain was found outside the back door, later confirmed as Jessica's, so they feared foul play. They questioned customers and employees, finding out she worked alone a lot, and that made her vulnerable. Days stretched into weeks, and despite extensive searches afoot, in the woods, around lakes, nothing turned up. Community members organized vigils, handed out flyers, plastered posters around town. Media picked up her story, even national shows like Disappeared covered it. But no witnesses, no clear leads. Jessica's loved ones were left in agony, unsure if she was alive or dead. For nearly 3 years, search parties kept looking until a new lead surfaced in 2016. That spring, things changed. In April, a 16-year-old girl was almost kidnapped by a man with a silver minivan in Muskegon County. She managed to escape, giving police a detailed description. That led to an arrest. Jeffrey Willis, a 46-year-old factory worker. No criminal record, but evidence linked him directly. Police found his house and his van, and inside, they uncovered disturbing evidence of blood-stained restraints, torture videos, and a folder on his laptop titled VIX, with subfolders named after various victims. One of those victims was Jessica. On June 29, 2014, A jogger found Rebecca Bletch's body less than a mile from her home. She'd been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Her loved ones mourned her loss, clinging to hope for justice. Willis's arrest brought answers, yet more horrors surfaced. His laptop contained thousands of graphic videos, revealing an obsession with violence. The VIX folder held dozens of photos of Jessica dating to the day she disappeared. Police later found that Willis's van matched witness descriptions on the night Jessica vanished, and he had a history of harassing women. Witnesses who'd seen him before remembered only petty flirtations, but Jessica felt deeply uneasy around him. In 2016, prosecutors charged Willis with kidnapping and murder, accusing him of snatching Jessica from the gas station and transporting her to his grandfather's house, where she was subjected to savage violence before being killed. The same revolver, a .357 Taurus, was used partially altered, but linked through DNA evidence. Even more chilling was the fact that his laptop files and his possession of bondage gear painted a picture of a twisted predator. Eventually, Willis's cousin Kevin Blumen, ex-correctional officer, confessed he helped hide Jessica's body after the crime. The authorities searched multiple sites, but Jessica's remains remained nowhere to be found. Bloom's cooperation was instrumental, but too late. Willis had already dug her up and moved her somewhere else. Over time, police investigated dozens of possible burial sites, but no luck. Jessica's mother, Shelley, refused to give up the pain of not knowing her daughter's final resting place haunted her. Volunteers and searches continued, but her body was never recovered. The case sparked broader change, too. Michigan passed the Jessica Haringa Act in 2016, strengthening safety laws for late-night workers requiring more security measures, cameras, panic buttons. The community still honors Jessica with memorials and fundraisers for her son, Zine. Her murder shattered the serenity of Norton Shores and showed how violent crime can destroy innocent lives. But it also inspired courage, people fighting to uncover the truth, to hold her killer responsible. Willis, now serving multiple life sentences, remains unrepentant, and her remains have yet to be found. Maybe one day he'll tell the full story. Until then, her story remains a somber chapter in the town's history, a grim reminder of loss and resilience. And for me, it's a lesson: you never really know what darkness lurks just around the corner, lurking in shadows we can't see until it's too late.